With their seasons both trending in the wrong direction, where do the Oilers and Canucks go from here? Hey everyone, welcome into Off the Post. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Steve Simmons in Toronto and Patrick Johnston in Vancouver. And as we talk here today, guys, only one Canadian team is in a playoff spot at everybody's favorite point of the season, American Thanksgiving, where generally if you're in a postseason position, you're looking pretty good the rest of the way, which is why we gave Bruce Garriock the week off, as the Senators are the lone team. So we don't need Bruce's input this week. Just joking. He'll be back next week. But while we have spoken recently about the Canucks woes, and we'll get there in a moment, Patrick, but we have to talk about what the heck is going on with the Edmonton Oilers, who have now surpassed the Canucks for most goals allowed in the NHL this season with 95 in just 25 games, which is pretty crazy. And they're coming off an 8-3 loss at home to Dallas on Tuesday. Steve, we are no stranger to watching the Oilers get off to slow starts in recent years, only to turn it around. But does this one feel different to you?
Well, if you go back 1 year, almost to this week, the Colorado Avalanche had real problems in goal. And they went ahead and they made two deals, one for Mackenzie Blackwood, one for Scott Wedgwood. And it has changed their outlook of the team. And I think right now it's the best team in hockey and with pretty sound goaltending. The Edmonton Oilers, for reasons that no one can explain, have sat with Stuart Skinner and his backup, whose name now escapes
Calvin
me.
Pickard.
Calvin Pickard shouldn't, because he's been around forever. They're just not good enough.
No.
And the team doesn't play good enough defense to have really crappy goaltending. And so it's a bad situation. Maybe they can make the playoffs because you're only a few points out and there's still Draisaitl and McDavid there. There's those guys by themselves can almost wheel you in that direction. But you can't do anything or expect anything or believe in anything with the goaltenders they have right now.
It's absolutely the case. And I mean, it's been a long-standing story in Edmonton that goaltending. I talk to people who think about this stuff, and they're just like, the Oilers have never taken goaltending seriously, going back to Devin Dubnyk. Like, just never put the effort into the position. And here they are. And you're absolutely right, Steve. Like, look at the Colorado, like the examples of, it's not finding a star goalie. It's just trying different guys. We've had such a sort of conversation here over, goaltending here. Obviously, they've invested in goaltending. But look at a guy like Artur Shilovs, who is having a great season in Pittsburgh. Let's be clear. But there's an example of a guy, when he came up a couple seasons ago, I sort of, I'm always fascinated by the second, third goalie, because these guys, their whole lives, they're the guy, and then they get to the NHL, and now they have to accept a different role, and it's a real mental challenge. And I said to him, listen, you're coming. He came in, there was a Demko injury shock. He comes in and, had become a bit of a forgotten guy in Abbotsford and with their AHL team. And I said, when you come in, what's the mentality? He goes, Adin Hill. And this is a season after Adin Hill became the guy in Vegas after being just some dude playing for a terrible team in San Jose. And so sticking with guys like Skinner and Pickard is such a strange choice when exactly so. Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood, two guys who I constantly get confused by because they both have Wood in their name and they've both been Devils goalies. But in the end, they're getting the job done. Why are they getting the job done? No one's really sure. But the Avalanche said what we had before wasn't working. We're moving on. We're trying somebody else. And there's just no reason for the Oilers to have stuck with these guys other than Stuart Skinner kind of sort of got them into the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row.
Stan Bowman is the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. Stan Bowman was the general manager of the three-time champion Chicago Blackhawks.
Yes, great example.
Chicago Blackhawks won their first Stanley Cup with Antti Niemi as their goaltender. A year later, or a year and a half later, he was out of the NHL.
Yeah.
They won two more cups with Corey Crawford, who was a solid NHL goalie. He's not going to the Hall of Fame.
No.
He's a solid NHL goalie who now has 2 Stanley Cup rings. Yeah. And they started one of those playoffs with Scott Darling as their starter to begin. So look at what you're talking about here. 3 Stanley Cups, below average goalie, maybe a little bit above average goalie. So maybe Stan Bowman doesn't have the regard for goaltenders that many of us do. I grew up covering the NHL when we watched Patrick Roy and Martin Brodeur and Dominic Hasek and Ed Belfour, and these guys made teams better. And they won a bunch of Stanley Cups combined. And when you have that kind of a goalie, it changes the way you can play, as the Buffalo Sabres did for all the years that they had Hasek. You can't have the best player in the world and maybe the fifth best player in the world, depending on how you're lining up your ratings, and have the 72nd best goalie. Like, it's just a dumb way of doing business.
Crawford's such a great story too, because do you remember who the nominal number one goalie was supposed to be that season in 2010, 2011 when he first came in?
I don't.
Marty Turco, right? And Turco was struggling, and they said, well, we're not going to stick with this guy. We're going to give it a go. We'll try this Crawford kid who's been coming up in the minors, and they've given up on Cristobal Huet. And Crawford did the job. Like, wasn't a star, but did the job. And they said, we're going to try, and they stuck with him for a while. And then they brought in Ray Emery to be his next, like they kept cycling through, and Crawford all the way through plugged along, and they stuck with him for good reason. There is no reason for the Oilers to keep sticking with Stuart Skinner.
And Niemi won the cup, and San Jose was so impressed they signed him to
a
pretty significant contract. And again, he just wasn't very good, and he wasn't an NHL caliber star goalie. And so it went on from there. But there are people out there. There are always people out there. There are always goalies available that they're the third guy and the waiver guy, and they have to be better than what Edmonton has, or different than what Edmonton has. And if you keep doing the same, what's the old thing? If you keep doing the same over and over again, it's the definition, and you mess up, it's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Oilers at home give up 8 goals against. That's insane by itself.
Yeah.
Corey Crawford, by the way, 40 years old. Is he eligible to play for Canada at the Olympics?
He's out. If he's not in the drug program now, I don't think they can put him in there.
It's too late.
I think they have. They do have Wedgwood in there, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And anyone else who has a passport and a goalie stick, I think, is the way it works now.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, look, at the end of the day, as Steve said, you might just need to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit here. It's going to be difficult to find a star caliber goalie out on the trade market. Not sure teams are willing to give that up. You're going to be looking for someone who's probably underperforming right now, and maybe a change of scenery can turn things around. But as we shift focus now to the Canucks, Patrick, a lot of focus on maybe what could happen down the road here. Yeah. And it all starts with Quinn Hughes. I think that's all everybody seems to want to talk about right now. What does this all mean when it comes to Quinn Hughes with the team's underperformance, and talk about trades and wanting to get younger? We know how much Jim Rutherford loves to make deals, but we're still pretty early on in the season here. What's your read on the situation?
Well, I mean, I obviously spoke with Jim Rutherford yesterday, and if you haven't seen my story at theprovince.com, go check it out, please. Rutherford very clear. Listen, we recognize things have not gone the way we wanted them to. We did think we'd be competing for a playoff team or playoff spot. Right now, they're on the outside looking in, and they're struggling for all kinds of reasons. They can't defend. Their goalie's hurt. They don't want to talk about injuries. Everybody's been injured. The Canucks have mostly managed to survive their injuries, but now they're dealing with the likes of Demko being out, and Philip Hedl was a guy who played well and a guy they had hopes for, but they also knew that would be struggling possibly to get injured. And of course he is, and now we're not sure he's ever going to play again. So, they're realistic. They say, listen, Rutherford is always a guy, and I said this to him yesterday when I talked to him. I said, he's always been a guy that likes to get ahead of the market in making trades. And usually that's to bring players in to build up his team. Now he's sitting in a position where going, listen, we need to think about the future. We need to find more young guys. One of the ways to get more young guys is to move out some veterans, and maybe we can bring in some interesting young players, and this was the new one for him, maybe even draft picks, because they know that draft picks can be turned into, players and that kind of thing. Anyway, they're trying to build something new here. The word rebuild is a word they never like to say, but it is a weird version of that. And that's where they're at. And as for how it plays out for Quinn Hughes, I mean, I'll just read back the answer he gave me when I said, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We all know about Quinn Hughes' future. You've talked about it yourself. Is this the kind of plan, the direction you seem to be heading? Is that something you've talked about with Quinn? He says, I believe Quinn and his agent are aware of the direction we want to go, and they're aware of the direction they want to go. Everybody wants to play on a winning team, but there's different reasons why people make decisions. So there we are.
Quinn Hughes wants to play in a winning team that happens to be in the state of New Jersey. So begin with that. And here's the complication for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's rare when you have a top 10 player. I mean, there's 32 teams. There's only 10 guys who change teams or are difference makers. Quinn Hughes is one of those guys. He changes the way you play. So you're going to have, if you want to trade him, you're going to have to trade him for something significant.
Yeah.
And what happens so often in these kind of deals is they never turn out balanced.
No.
The better player is the win for whoever gets him, and that better player is Quinn Hughes, unless you're trading him for McDavid or Draisaitl or one of those guys, Pellegrini or somebody. He's exceptional. Let's be honest. And so what are you getting? You're getting a couple of draft picks. Well, a couple of draft picks means you draft them now or next year, and then you wait 2 more years on top of that, unless they're really early picks. And maybe they're good, and maybe they're not, and who knows what they are. And that's always the fate of those kind of deals. The other problem the Canucks have, aside from what in the hell do you do with Hughes if you are building around him, is they want to change players. They want to make trades, and they have way too many players with no trade clauses who might be of interest to other teams. So they're going to have to get guys to agree to waive their no trades in order to trade them, because the rest of the roster isn't worth much, and you can't get a whole lot of anything for them. And so it's a real conundrum for Jimmy Rutherford, who's done great work everywhere he's been. And so, and I expect down the road he'll be doing great work here too. But this is a real mess because you have this incredible asset and not enough around him.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, they're starting with their UFAs. They say, you're looking at the likes like Teddy Bluger, Kiefer Sherwood, Derek Forbort, who's also injured. Vander Kane, we'll see. I mean, I think they believe that there's still value there, even though, Kane hasn't had the most amazing season, only 3 goals. There's still something there. All 4 of those guys, I mean, he's not wrong. Those are all the kind of guys that do move at the deadline. The question is whether, any team really wants to get them right now. And he's making a bet that they will.
And what we're not seeing, and I wish we were seeing it, what we're not seeing are enough hockey trades.
Yeah.
I need a left winger. You need a center. Let's flip this off. We'll make a deal here. We're not seeing very many of those kind of trades. And, we saw one last year with Natchez and Rantanen.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for Carolina? But having said that, you don't see because of the cap and dollar for dollar and how are we going to fill in this salary slot and how are we going to fill that slot. The salary cap has really messed up good hockey trading.
Oh, yeah.
Guys who are good at it.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Rutherford was one of those guys who was good at it.
Yeah.
You expect him to have a sense of all this.
Yeah. Maybe we have a window now just with the cap going up. Not everybody capped out at the moment, but you're right. For the most part, that player for player idea, here's my guy, here's your guy, that trade certainly has gone by the wayside.
I mean, I lived through the Leafs trading 5 for 5 to get Doug Gilmour.
Yeah.
Or the Leafs trading 2 for 4, I think, to get Matt Sundin.
Right.
Those are, Cliff Fletcher had a long list of spectacular trades and a couple of spectacular failures.
Yeah.
But boy, did that engage a fan base.
Pat Quinn here in Vancouver, the 2 sort of most legendary '90s trades where he picked up Cliff Ronning, Jeff Courtnall, Sergio Momesso, and Robert Dirk, all for the ghost of Dan Quinn and Garth Butcher, and then picked up, managed to come out of Craig Jenney not coming here to get Jeff Brown, Brett Hedican, and Nathan Lafayette for Peter Nedved. You're absolutely right. Those are the trades we love. Those are the trades we remember. It would be great to have some come back.
Yeah, should be an interesting next couple of weeks here for the Canucks and the Oilers. We'll see how it all shakes out. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Patrick Johnston and Steve Simmons, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.